In a video on ponyuptempo.com, you said you want your guys to practice with a passion, play with a passion, live their lives off the field with a passion. Have you always been like that? Were you like that when you were the same age as your players?
I wouldn't say I probably learned that as I got older, so I like for them to have an opportunity to learn a little bit faster than I did, so that maybe they can accomplish the things that they want to accomplish in life, so it's something that I've found that has been, if you are passionate about something, then you're probably gonna be pretty good at it. And so I try to tell the guys, even when I'm recruiting kids, that choose a major that you're passionate about, not that a major that you think you're gonna make a lot of money at. Because if you're passionate about it, then you're gonna be good at it. And then if you're good at it, then you're gonna be successful. And then that will allow you to make the living that you want to make. So, and that's why I tell them in life I want them to be passionate about whatever they're doing, because it's not worth it if you're not passionate. There's a lot of different ways you can pay for your schooling. That's a lot less stressful on you than playing college football. So because we demand a lot of them.
I was going to say, is that something that can be taught, or is that passion born into a guy?
I think that you can light that fire under some guys. Some guys just hadn't had that fire lit under them, and they haven't figured it out. And some of them, the pilot just won't light. So you have to, but you at least want to give them the opportunity to try to light that fire, so that they can have that passion about what they're doing, because it's supposed to be fun. It's still a game. It's supposed to be fun. Yeah, it's hard work, but it's still supposed to be fun.
You're getting ready for your first season at SMU, and this video obviously is to introduce you to Pony fans, many of whom may not realize that you played in college across town at TCU.
Yeah.
You played against SMU twice as a redshirt freshman in '86. SMU won by 10. When you were a senior in '89, TCU won by 18. What was that rivalry like from the Fort Worth side?
Well, I think it's probably very similar to what it was like from the SMU side. I mean, at the time, because it was Southwest Conference, and so it was it was different. Big 12 wasn't in existence yet, so the rivalry and being so close and recruiting some of the same guys and going head to head, not only on the field but in some of the recruiting battles, it was pretty intense. You learned early that SMU and TCU was that was the big rivalry. And and Texas A&M was a big rivalry. But for us, that SMU game was big because it was the battle of the Metroplex at the time.
You mentioned the Big 12. Your last job at Kansas, you're in the Big 12. You coached against your alma mater before.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're here. You're back in that rivalry, and the third game this year is going to be against TCU. What are your emotions or thoughts like when you go against the team that you played for?
Oh, just like playing any other opponent. I'm out there trying to grind them. We were trying to get it done. So and then after the game is a little different. But before while we're playing them and while we're getting ready to play them, it's just like they're any other opponent. Trying to find a way to beat them.
The 2015 season will be your first at SMU, but your 26th as a college coach. When did you first realize you wanted to get into coaching, and why?
Well, I'll tell you what. It was my freshman year of college, and of course, when I was coming out, my dad said, "You need to go into business." Back then, everybody wanted to go into the business world. But when I took that accounting class, it was like, you don't want to go into business. And so really, my college coaches really kind of directed me. They kind of said, "Buddy, why don't you go into education? You got a good personality. You got a good mind for the game. You may want to try coaching." And so I took a couple of education classes and did well in them and liked them. And so then I started taking more education classes, and so I got my degree in secondary education and became a coach.
You and Chad Morris met, I think, for the first time when he was coaching at Bay City high school, you were at Texas A&M, and you went to Bay City to go recruit Archie McDaniel. How is Coach Morris different now than he was then?
I think like all of us, he's grown in the profession, but his enthusiasm hadn't changed one bit. He was enthusiastic back then, and he's still enthusiastic today. All of us, we got a little bit, well, I don't have any hair, but it's, a little more gray hair than what he did back when I first met him. But, he had done a wonderful job at Bay City. And Archie wasn't the only kid. It was three other kids off his team that we signed at A&M. So, he had a really good program going at Bay City.
Is it better to recruit guys to come play for Chad Morris rather than going into his office and trying to get his guys to come play for you?
Obviously, his attitude and his demeanor and his energy makes it easier to recruit kids to come play at a school where he's the head coach. He's a good person. He's a good coach, but he's a good person, and he cares about the kids and he cares about doing things the right way. And so it's pretty, when kids come on campus or they talk to him on the phone, it goes a long way, and because they can see that he's real and he's genuine, and that he's been successful just about everywhere he's been. So the kids understand that. And so, going in, it was easy going into his school too. I mean, he was fair. He was fair to everybody. As long as you didn't mess over his kids, he was fair to you.
Part of the nature of the business of coaching is you move on from one job to the next to the next. You've done it. Coach Morris has done it. Were you able to maintain a friendship, a relationship over the years since the A&M Bay City days to now, or did you sort of lose touch and then get reconnected to end up here today?
Yeah, well, we kind of lost touch because when he moved school, when he left Bay City, and I pretty much have recruited the southeast area of Texas, and when he went to Austin, I haven't recruited Austin a whole lot. I went in and out of their position recruit, so we kind of lost a little bit of touch there. But then when I went back to work at A&M the second time with Mike Sherman, Mike had kind of became friends with Chad, and so and he was coming around and actually and had some input on with Coach Sherman and what offense what they would. Coach Sherman was interested in what the offense that Chad was running at that time in Lake Travis, and so he had come down and spent him and his staff. So I got kind of reconnected at that time. and then when he went to Tulsa, he worked for a lot of guys that I had that worked for, and there with Todd Graham. He worked with Van Malone. He worked with Van. He worked with Archie. He worked with Paul Randolph. He worked with a lot of different guys that I had worked with from different places. So kind of knew of him through those guys. And then he did so well there the year he was there, and he went to Clemson, and I know some of the guys on Clemson staff. So we didn't really we worked with guys that we both knew, but we never had worked together. And so and this coaching is a small fraternity. You think it's big, but it's a smaller fraternity than what you think. So a lot of guys know that you've worked with may go on to another staff, and that's kind of what happened with Chad now.
You mentioned Van Malone, your boss on the new defense. Mm-hmm. You worked with him at Texas A&M. You coached the defensive line. He coached the secondary. Mm-hmm. How much obviously you were all working on the same defense, but how much did the D-line coach and the secondary coach work together then? Was there an instant chemistry friendship that made you think we may coach again together one day? Or did you sort of stay in your own room, he stayed in his own room? How much did you guys work together, and how was that relationship early on?
Well, Van and our relationship go way back farther than Texas A&M. I don't know if you know, but Van, I was a GA at Texas A&M, at TCU when Van was coming out of high school, and he actually had committed to TCU. And then Texas rolled in there, and so then he decommitted and went to Texas. So my relation goes way back to Van then. That's when first knew about Van Malone. Because my position coach at the time, who was Scott Brown, who now is the defensive line coach for the San Francisco 49ers, was recruiting Van. And so I kind of had I kind of knew Van then. And then when Van finished playing, his pro days were over. He went back and was coaching at his high school in Houston, Waltrip,
Right.
which I was recruiting. So I would go into the school and Van, Van, his personality hadn't changed. He's the same jokester guy that he's been like that ever since since I've known him. And so so I would always try. I was at A&M at the time, and I would always try to get Van to come work our camps at A&M. Come on, because you knew he was going to be successful. He just was a smart guy. He had that personality. He knew the game. So he knew he was going to be successful. I just get him to come up to work our camps. Tried to anyway. And I'm not going to work A&M camps, man. I went to Texas. I'm not going to work A&M camps. So we get let go at A&M under Archie, and then a few years go by, and then I go back to A&M staff under Mike Sherman. And guess who's on the staff? Van Malone. so I gave him a hard time about, I thought you wasn't ever going to come work at A&M, so that's kind of how, but we've been knowing each other for a while now, and like I said, he's got a bright future in this profession.
So you reconnected with Coach Morris.
Mm-hmm.
You've been friends with Coach Malone forever, since he was a high school senior.
Mm-hmm.
Who was the bigger influence on getting you to come to Dallas and take this job?
Van Malone.
Yeah. Did he recruit you?
Because Chad, we had been talking, throughout, we always keep in touch. We always kept in touch. I would always call him. We was in the same conference, so they played a certain team, and I need to ask questions about that team. I call a buddy. That's just how it works. We call a buddy and say, hey, how did this team, what did they do when you got into this? What do you know about what tendencies did y'all get? So so I would always call, man, and we always stayed in touch that way. And then on the road recruiting, we would see each other recruiting. So we go to dinner and go hang out. So
An A&M coach and a UT coach?
No, this was I was at Kansas. He was at Oklahoma State.
And you go to dinner together?
Oh, yeah.
Didn't your bosses frown on that sort of thing?
No, they know. That's just the way it is. And a lot of times, sometimes we recruited the same guy, sometimes we wouldn't. So it worked out. So
You and Coach Malone coached at A&M. Coach McDaniel played for you at A&M. How similar is the defense you're running now to the one you were teaching then?
Well, with Archie, it was very different because Archie, we were under RC, and Mike Hankerwood was the defense coordinator at that time, and so we were a 3-4 defense. When Archie played for us, and then when we left, and then the new staff came in, I think they went to a 4-3 concept. So it was really different from when Archie and I played. But then when we were back with Sherman, it's similar to what we were doing when Archie was a graduate assistant for us, and when Van and I were on the same staff. So it's pretty similar to that.
Coach McDaniel called you a friend, a mentor, one of the main reasons he's at SMU. You've coached a lot of guys in your career.
Mm-hmm.
When you looked at him as a player, was there anything about him that made you say that guy is going to be a coach one day?
Archie I always called him, he was a young man with an old soul. That's what I told him, because he was always he was always very mature. Even as a freshman coming out, he was very mature. He was a deep thinker. When we were recruiting Archie, he was on his way to LSU. He was on his way to LSU, for a while there. And then he came around and decided to come to Texas A&M. So, and his reasons were good, legitimate, mature reason for why he chose to come to A&M. So I knew that Archie was always a deep thinker, and even when he was a graduate assistant, the recruiting part was natural to Archie, because we would put him on, like we'd tell Archie, hey, you know, we need D lineman. I want you to scour the country looking for JC D lineman. And Archie would come back with defensive linemen he had talked to, he had evaluated, he had established a relationship with them, he knew what their grades were. So he was always, the recruiting part came natural to him. And so now the computer part was a different story. But the X's and O's and the recruiting, he was always good with that. So you knew Archie was going to be successful, whatever he decided to go into, because you know, he just had that quality, that work ethic.
Coaches always talk about the culture at different schools and how it varies from one school to the next. And when you look at your resume and all the places you've been, one of the ways you can break it down is you've been at big public schools: Minnesota, Oklahoma State, Colorado, A&M, Alabama, Nebraska, Kansas. You've also been at smaller private schools: TCU, Northwestern, now SMU. Are there major differences that can be broken along that line, coaching private versus public, big versus small? Obviously, your job is to recruit and develop talent and win games everywhere you go. But is there a major difference in your day-to-day job at a school like SMU compared to, say, Colorado or Nebraska or Alabama?
No, you know, I think, like you said, the number one, our job is to recruit student athletes, bring them in and develop them best we can. And that's whether you're at a big school, a big public institution, or you're at a smaller institution. We've had success I've had success at both institutions. You know, I've had good players at both institutions. You know, the smaller institution, obviously the biggest deal is you don't have as many supporters, you know, because you know, when you get a graduating class that's 10,000, or you get a graduating class that's 1,000. You know, it's different, the number of alumni that they have, and so, you know, sometimes that can be good and sometimes that can be bad. You know, so but as far as the football aspect goes, it's no different. It's no different. Some of the expectations and the demand on your time to do things may be a little bit different with some of the bigger institutions, public institutions, because you got to go around the state and do golf tournaments, and you got to go around the state doing speaking engagements and things like that. You know, as a coach, but other than the football part, it's no different. And if you treat it any different, I would say you're making a mistake.
You and the staff got hired in large part because this team went 1-11 last year. And as Coach Morris has said, there's a lot of work to do, a lot of improving to do. With that in mind, when you recruit, is there a difference between looking at a guy who might be able to come in and play right away versus looking at a guy whose ceiling 2 or 3 years down the road might be higher? And how do you decide which one to go after?
Well, I think you got to go after the best available player. You know, now you need a crystal ball to know which one's going to end up being the best player. You never know. You know, sometimes I've recruited kids that were 5-star kids that never saw the field, and then I've recruited kids that were walk-ons or last-minute signees that have gone on to play in the NFL. One of my favorite guys that I've coached thus far is tell you a little story. We got a little time for a little story. I was at Alabama. Coach Ross and I worked together at Alabama. Coach Hollins and Head and I worked together at A&M. So there's a lot more connections around than that we didn't mention. But anyway, back to my story. There was a kid named Wallace Gilbert. Okay, he was from Bay Minette, Alabama, Baldwin County High School. Okay, and the deal, I had gone to Alabama with Coach Price, and the whole deal with Coach Price went down. Coach Shula came in, and it was a topsy turvy. It was crazy, And so he retained the defensive staff pretty much, and some of the guys on offense, but he retained the defensive staff. And so, and this was right during spring recruiting. And so all this, I mean, we had gone through spring ball, we were on the road spring recruiting. And so, and we had just gotten there late with Coach Price as well in the recruiting process. So we still had a couple scholarships available. And so in one particular, we needed a defensive end. And so I'm out, I go recruiting, and I'm in, Mobile was my area. So I'm out at Baldwin County High School, and I'm watching them practice, spring practice. And there's this kid running around the track, you know, kind of working out. So he came up to me, saw the scripted A on my hat, and, "You from Alabama?" "Yeah, I'm from Alabama." He said, "Why y'all didn't recruit me?" I was like, "We just got here, son. I don't, who are you? What's your name?" You know, and so we started talking, and I said, "Well, what are you working out for?" He said, "Well, I'm getting ready to play in the Mississippi-Alabama All-Star game." And I said, "Oh, okay." I said, "Where are you going to school?" And he said, "Well, I'm going to Colin Junior College. I'm sorry, Copiah Lincoln Junior College." And I said, "Oh," I said, "well, good luck to you." He said, "All right, Coach, you'll be seeing me again." I said, "Okay." So we go on recruiting, and then back then the All-Star game, Alabama and Mississippi All-Star game was at the end of May. It was right at the end of May. So we're getting all these alumni calling. There's this kid that nobody can block. He's a defensive end. And to make a long story short, it was the kid that I met running around the track. And he had just gotten his ACT scores. And he was, I mean, we watched film. We got high school film on him. You know, it was okay. It wasn't great. You know, we got some practice film from the All-Star game, and, you know, he was doing good. And so we had a scholarship. We needed a defensive end. We called him and his mom to come up to Tuscaloosa. And he walked in the door. He said, "Coach, I told you I'll see you again." It was Wallace Gilbert, who's playing with the Cincinnati Bengals now with Hunt. Him and the guy who's from Mississippi, Hunt.
Marcus, yeah.
Marcus on the same team. He played for Kansas City Chiefs for a while. And then, but anyway, that's what I'm saying. You never know. You never know how a kid's going to turn out. I had another kid at Alabama. His name is Rudy Griffin. He started nose. He's coaching now. He's coaching at a small school in Alabama. He came to us. He was at the Citadel. He didn't want to be he did not want to stay at the Service Academy. And so he walked on to Alabama. He was all of 5'11", 280, played nose guard. You know, he had to sit out a year. You know, I'm saying, yeah, okay, this kid walk on, he's a good walk on, he'll be all right. You know, offense the whole year, we can't block him. You got to look, we can't block him. You know, we can't block him. I said, all right, he's just reading the card, you know, scout team, he not. So he goes through spring for it with us, and he did okay, but he still didn't do anything that just caught my eye. But he came back that two-a-day, that training camp, and he ended up starting for us 2 years. 1 year we were first in the nation in total defense, the next year we were second in the nation in total defense. And he was 5'11", 285 pounds, nose tackle.
You know, obviously, an awful lot of coaches around the state of Texas.
Yep.
Do you get more calls from people in your recruiting area saying, "I've got a kid you should look at," or from former players who are now coaches saying, "Coach, I got a guy you need to come check out"?
Well, equally both. I know so many guys. I mean, and that since I've been recruiting in Texas for so long, I grew up in Texas. High school coaches, high school players that I played with or that I played against are now coaching. College players that I played with or played against are now coaching. Some of my coaches that coached me in high school, a lot of them have retired, but there's still a couple of them out there that's still coaching. You know. And then I'm getting Alan Waddell. I'm gonna give you an example. Alan Waddell was a coach. I coached with him at A&M. He was a linebacker coach when Archie first came in there. But I've been knowing Coach Waddell since I was 10 years old. He was a head high school coach at the rival high school that I went. When I played, I played against him. You know. But when I went to TCU and I would go back home, I would go to his school and work out. because they had better weight room than we did in my high school. But he would give me the key. He'd give me the key. Let me go work out. Come back. But that's why I've been knowing him forever. You know, and he had a great. He won 4 or 5 state championships at Lamarck, and you know, and you know, he's a great coach. And but you know, those type of guys that I Tommy Kaiser I work with. He's a big coach here. I mean, Coach Amon in North Shore that just retired. You know, it's been a bunch of guys I've known, a lot of them, and like you said, so you know, in this profession, in any profession, it's all about, you know, a lot of it's who you know, and I've been fortunate enough to know a lot of coaches in this state, and you know, have a good relationship with them. So I get calls from ex-players, the guys that I played college with. You know, nowadays a lot of these guys are working kids out. You know, I mean, Kiefer, one of the offensive linemen, he came up and asked me. A guy I played with at TCU named Roosevelt Collins. Roosevelt trained Kiefer. You know, I didn't even know this. so you know, it just is, you know, Larry Brown, who's played with the Cowboys, played with me over at TCU. He's around. You know, so we got a lot of guys that kind of just, you know, you kind of lose touch with them, and then you come back to Texas and they just kind of pop up.
You and Coach Gunn both work with the defensive line.
Mm-hmm.
What's that dynamic like? Is it as simple as he works with the ends and you work with the inside guys, or is the breakdown a little more complex than that?
It's probably a little more complex than that. We both work with the interior, both sides, interior and outside. We both work with both of them. You know, I have a little bit more experience than Keith in the defensive line, but Keith has plenty of experience. He knows what he's doing, and so I'll sometimes send the defensive tackles with Keith, and he'll work on certain things with them. I'll take the ends. Sometimes he'll take the ends. I'll take the tackles. You know, all depends on what we're trying to get accomplished. And you know, and like I said, he's doing a great job with them, and he has a great relationship with the players. You know, he's known them a little bit longer than we have, and he got a good peg on who can do what and who needs to get pushed a little bit and who needs to get loved up a little bit. So, you know, it's been a good dynamic.
You've got several guys, Andy McClenahan, Mason Gentry, Zach Wood, at least in the spring, Zelt Minor, who now have done some work at end and tackle.
Mm-hmm.
Do you prefer guys who can flip in and out like that, or would you prefer clearly you know, a big, thick guy for the interior and more of a speed outside guy at end?
Yeah, well, I prefer more of bigger guys for the interior and you know, more athletic guy for the defensive end spot. And I think the difference is that, you know, they were a 3-4, we're going to a 4-3. You know, so we have what we have as far as our personnel, and the good thing about it is we do have some guys that have versatility, and we can move them inside, and they can, you know, and you know, I've been pleased with what I've seen from some of those guys that were playing in and we've moved inside. So, you know, you just got to, it makes us quicker, make us more athletic, you know, when you can do that. You know, and I don't mind doing it as long as they can handle the workload inside. And I think these guys can.
Before Zelt Minor got hurt in the spring, he and Mason Gentry were working with the first team defense at the tackle spots. Mm-hmm. And then when Zelt got hurt, Zach stepped in and moved inside a little bit. Yeah. Are there significant differences between the two interior positions, or theoretically could Zelt and Mason flip-flop back and forth from one play to the next?
Well, they could. Preferably, there are, you know, I like my nose tackles to be, let me back up. I would like for them to be interchangeable, but what we have now, we don't have interchangeable guys. You know, we got a true 3 technique and a true nose guard kind of guy. And so, you know, I think some of the 3 techniques can go over and play nose. You would prefer not to. You don't want that to happen, but if we got thin and we had to, then we could make it work. But you like Mason and some of the bigger, stronger guys to play the nose, and then you like some of the more athletic guys to play the 3 technique.
There are some defensive line coaches who say it all starts in the middle, either plugging the run and collapsing the pocket. And there are others who say a defensive line is only going to be as good as the amount of pressure you can bring crashing in from the ends. Do you have a philosophy that says one is the starting point for any defensive line? You've got to be good at one, either the interior or exterior?
I like to say I'm the guy to say you got to be strong up the middle. You got to have two good tackles. You got to have a good Mike linebacker, and you got to have good safeties. You have to be strong up the middle. Now, to be a great defense, okay, if you got a good cover corner guy, and you got the guy that can come off that edge and wreak havoc on the quarterback, then you got a chance to be great. So you'll be solid if you can get a good strong up the middle. But to be great, you got to have pass rushers and guys that can cover on the corner in today's football, in today's game.
Under the previous coaching staff, a lot of what the defensive line was asked to do was tie up blockers so the linebackers could run free to the ball. Mm-hmm. How much do you ask your defensive linemen to do that, or will your defensive linemen be making more plays themselves?
Well, hopefully they'll be making more plays. They're on scholarship just like we are. We're a gap control defense, so we're responsible for our certain gap responsibilities. Now, we're just not going to run around blocks. We're going to attack the blockers to create contact on the blockers. But your job is to protect your gap and go make a play. So that's what we're going to do. We're more of attack react style of defense. We're not a read style of defense.
Would you prefer a group of guys to take those starting positions and basically never come off the field because they're so dominant, or do you believe strongly in rotating fresh guys in and out all day long?
I believe strongly in rotating fresh guys in and out. I think that you will definitely reap the benefits in the fourth quarter if you can roll your guys and keep them fresh in today's game and the up tempo and everything that you're seeing. I don't think your guy in the interior defensive line, you cannot expect them to play at a high level with that type of energy for 90 plays. It's not going to happen. So you got to be able. You need to have a two deep where you can roll your guys in if you want them to play at a high level.
But you mentioned the up tempo offenses that you see more and more and more. Mm-hmm. How much rotation can you really do? Is it just from one drive to the next?
It all depends. You got to pick your time because they when they sub, you can sub. You just got to know when to do it. And so, and then that's, as a defensive line coach, that's our job. When we see them run a running back off, you can run because the officials are going to hold the game up for you to get them on the field. So if they're not subbing, then you can't sub. But if they're subbing, you can sub. So you got to make sure you keep an eye on that.
Since you and Coach Gunn and as the coordinator, Coach Malone, started working with these guys through the end of spring ball, who impresses you or who improved the most after, just a few 15 practices with you?
I'm going to tell you the guy that impressed me the most was Justin Lawler. Justin Lawler has a chance to be a very good football player. Very good football player. And he's in SMU got a few more years to see. And he's going to be a pleasant surprise.
What do you like about him?
He's got a great motor. He got great instincts. He's just always around the ball. And he was very productive this spring. And he's got some leadership qualities that I really like. He didn't play much. He didn't play last year or play much last year at all. So you didn't really see those. You can't see those things. So he's and in the spring, he was a little reluctant. Now in the conditioning and the summer conditioning, and you see him starting to step up. His confidence grow, and he's always wanting to watch tape. He's always texting me or calling me, Coach, how can I watch this? Can you what's your login code so I can get on and watch Baylor so I can do it? I mean, he's a junkie. He's a junkie, and he has been the most impressive to me in the front thus far.
Okay, you mentioned in addition to his athletic ability, his leadership qualities.
He has it.
You got him. You've got a couple of veterans in Zach Wood, Andy McClanahan. Mm-hmm. Is it possible for people to take on those leadership roles when basically they're all freshmen to you? This is their first year playing for you, Coach Gunn, Coach Malone,
Mm-hmm.
or do they have to be in the system and go through the games for a while before those people really sort of rise to the top as leaders?
I don't think so. I think because of their work ethic and because of their attitude, people, I mean, the players will know if this guy is for real or not. Just because, and Justin, nobody's going to outwork him. Nobody's going to outwork him in the weight room. Nobody's going to outwork him out there running. And then nobody's going to outwork him in practice. And they know that. And the kids know that, you know. And so now his biggest thing is now when game time shows up, does that translate onto the field? And it did this spring when we scrimmaged and when we went at it. So I'm real excited about him. You know, and I'm real excited about some of the, you know, not that the other guys didn't make progress and do some good things. You know, Zach really played 2 or 3 positions for us. You know, I thought Mason, for being a young guy and hadn't played a lot of football, made some strides, and Andy did a really good job at the Leo position. You know, so and Zelt, when he was healthy, you know, he was doing some decent things. You know, we got to get him to play a little bit lower and some things like that. But you know, I was pleased with some of those guys and some of the things that they did. But Justin just kind of stood out a little bit more.
Of all the guys you've got, who's most similar to Buddy Wyatt, the player?
I would say probably Mason Gentry. I was a grinder, you know. I was just a try hard guy. You know, didn't have great talent, but I was a try hard guy. And Mason, not that he doesn't have, he's definitely bigger than I was, and probably have more talent. But he's a try hard guy and a plugger and a fighter, and you know, and I would say Mason Gentry.
In that same video on Pony Up Tempo, you said of your players that if they want something they've never had, they got to be willing to do something they've never done. Is that a Buddy Wyatt original quote, or where'd you steal it from?
No, that's not a Buddy Wyatt original quote. I believe I got that saying from Joe Kynes. I got defense coordinator I work for at Alabama, and work with him at A&M as well.
And do you see your guys doing things they've never done? Are they buying into that?
Well, I think so. This summer has been a different animal for them. So I think they're definitely doing something that they've never done before, and they're working. I mean, you know, it's a grind for them. It's different. It's a learning process as well, because I don't think they've had to grind like this in the past in the summer. You know, we got coaches that are always around. We're around them. We're gonna be here, and we're gonna be on them. You know, we're gonna be demanding. We're gonna be, you know, make them be accountable for their actions, on and off the field. And so, I think we're taking steps in the right direction. I have seen them do some things that I don't believe that they've done before. At least that's what they're telling me. You know, so, you know, hopefully, you know, and we'll see it transfer to the field.